Hey there, listeners. Welcome to Let's Get Oral. It's your favorite co-host. I'm Jonathan Dornell.
And I'm Camille.
Love it. And today, we have a very fun and exciting episode for you all. Camille and I are lucky to be able to steal some time from Dr. Holly Ganz, who is the Chief Science Officer at AnimalBiome. You want to say hi to our listeners, Holly?
Yeah, hi everyone.
We're so excited to have you here. Just kind of give some color to you all as listeners. Holly and I are actually both in the Oakland area, and definitely a person after my heart who is classically trained in microbial ecology. That's what I focus a lot of my PhD work in. Camille, as you all have known and heard from our previous episodes, highly dabbled into the microbial ecology space. So anytime we can have brethren on the podcast, we're very excited to share. So
to be fair, the ecology part is all you guys. I do host work.
But that is exactly a key part of the ecosystem. And Holly, just correct me if I'm wrong, you did your PhD work at UC Davis.
That's right.
Which is just up the road from here in the Bay Area. And then you also did some postdoctoral work there. And I'd love to hear more about your time doing work in Namibia.
Oh, yeah. I did a postdoc at UC Berkeley and actually studied wildlife disease and was lucky enough to get some funding. And so I got to go many, many times. And we were looking at disease in a number of different animals, mostly like zebras and elephants and and vultures and some. It was very, very amazing. And I was studying how that disease is transmitted in the environment by focusing on soil microbial ecology.
That's amazing.
What was the vector?
Well, that was something, there were a lot of ideas. So basically I was working on anthrax,
yes,
which is mostly a disease of grazing animals.
So what is Bacillus anthracis? This bug is a gram-positive, soil-dwelling bacterium responsible for causing anthrax, an infectious disease that commonly affects grazing animals. Even though anthrax is a relatively rare disease for us humans, zoonotic transfer does happen between infected animals and us.
And there are different theories about how it's transmitted because it has environmental transmission. And I did a really crazy experiment where I actually you could do this there. You cannot do this here. But there'd been some lab work suggesting that the bacterium that causes anthrax might actually be able to grow in the rhizosphere of plants. So I did a study actually with a native plant there and zebra blood and soil. And I actually showed that, both that actually the presence of the Bacillus anthracis spores promoted the germination of the plants and they were more likely to become established. And then if they had the blood also, then they got even taller.
Wow.
And then we did some other work, which we showed that like carcass sites, so animals that die from this disease actually like become attractive to other animals. So it's not just like random blowing around in the wind. Actually, there's a lot of behavior and sort of other things that are really, I think, driving these dynamics.
Very cool. That is fun.
Yes.
Dangerous, but fun.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And we're very excited and grateful to really be able to share with our listeners and dive more in depthly with you about the role of oral health with companion pets. I think everyone here on this podcast, we each have companions in our own households. I have my furkid, Akka, who makes cameos on camera, as you know. And I love coming across ventures that not only are diving into microbiome-based science and trying to understand the correlations and causations between health and disease in the ecosystem, but how that looks for other parts of our families that doesn't sometimes get the spotlight when it comes to health and wellness. And so if you could share with us, how did you even get started into wanting to pursue microbiome science related venture in the companion space?
Yeah, this is it's an interesting journey. So I decided after my postdoc that I thought that was really cool that we could characterize all these amazing bacteria in soil. And I had adopted a herding dog, and I fell in love with her, and I decided, and I'd gone to Davis for my PhD, right? So I had friends at the vet school, and I was like, oh, I shouldn't have done the PhD. I should have gotten the DVM. But because it's not so easy, like following the academic path.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually did like apply and get into vet school there, but then realized that I was already like older, and it was going to be really expensive, although now it doesn't seem as expensive because that's like 10 years ago. But so I took a research appointment and actually decided to try and apply what I had been learning about microbiome science to cats and dogs, just because I really love them. And probably, well, you guys are different. I would say they're just, some of us just really like animal health, and that's sort of our passion. And like, even though it's probably be more practical to study humans, just, some of us just like the fuzzy creatures. And so I decided also that, these techniques that we're using, right, like using genetics to characterize bacteria, like they don't teach that in vet school. I was going to lose all that if I had gone, and I was really fell in love with research. And so I had trouble getting funding though for that research. So I did a Kickstarter, and I asked people to send me their cat's poop so I could look at the cat microbiome in species. And all these people sent me in their samples of their cat's poop. And then some of them, like they were literally like, maybe even I'm on unemployment, I have no money, but my cat has chronic diarrhea. In some cases, they said it was because they took their cat in for a dental, and they like had major antibiotics given to them, and then they just never recovered. And after spending a long time doing like esoteric fun research, I got really excited about helping people, and it just seemed like so much more immediate. So that's what led me to start the company.
Very cool.
That's an amazing origin story.
I have to say that I thought about veterinary school as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can only go to school forever until you have to do something with it.
Right? Exactly. I could just keep going to school. I would be so happy.
Same.
If only it was free.
Right.
Exactly.
That's fascinating. And since the origin of AnimalBiome and the work that's continued from there, could you share like what are some highlights of insights that the microbiome has informed you about when it comes to either gut health and our interest, particularly oral health and companion pets?
Sure. I mean, I will start with gut health just because that's where the most pressing need was from the beginning. And basically it ties all back in, which is that sort of suggestion that antibiotic use might be causing a problem. And basically what I've learned is that, there's some antibiotics like metronidazole that a lot of us get from our veterinarian if our dog or cat's having diarrhea. It turns out that it kills some of the core anaerobic bacteria that are really critical for the function of the gut, particularly things like bile acid metabolism, which is just detoxifies the gut. It's really just important in many ways, both for people and for pets. And it introduces dysbiosis by killing off the good anaerobes, and then it also allows things like E. coli to flourish. So that's not great. Mm-hmm. And because I was a microbial ecologist and a bit of a wise ass, I was like, the probiotics that exist today are, 100 years old and not that interesting. And so I developed a way of delivering a fecal transplant in an oral capsule to restore those bacteria that are killed off by antibiotic exposure.
Holly just introduced another technical term, a fecal transplant, or you'll hear us sometimes say FMT for fecal microbiota transplant, is a common procedure where the poo from a healthy donor are introduced to the GI tract of a patient.
So that was sort of the start, but I did want to include oral health, and so pretty quickly, because it's right, the gut starts with the mouth, and veterinarians know that, I think better than a lot of human doctors because they actually learn about it in vet school. And so there's no like big division within the profession about that. And so a couple of things I've learned about oral health so we did publish a paper last year on stomatitis in cats, which is a really terrible sort of inflammatory disease that they can get. That's really horrible. But then we also compared cats with periodontal disease. And I don't know if you guys knew like cats can have their teeth resorbed. That was news to me. I'm not so deep in oral health as maybe you guys are, but that's something that happens.
I actually did not know that. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. It doesn't happen to people, right? I haven't heard of that.
Not that I've heard of.
Yeah, the one thing I know about cats and their mouths is they don't take, they like when it comes to the taste profile versus dogs. So not deeply as tied as oral health, but that is a nice nugget of information. Wow.
Yeah, and they and for stomatitis, they find that like we did this study in part to try and identify new approaches that might be able to replace the current standard of care, which is removing all the teeth.
Sure.
Oh yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah. There's a similar, I mean, it's not a gut disease, but well, actually, let's back up. Stomatitis, what is that for cats? What does that look like?
Well, it's a really severe inflammatory condition, which actually being on the host side is more, they think it's more coming on the host side, but we did find that the microbiome is quite altered in that state. Of course, that doesn't mean that it's causal at all. And now we're trying to look and see if fungi might be playing a role, or is it really just, an autoimmune problem?
How does the cat behave when it's insulted with stomatitis?
Oh, it's very painful and like quite inflamed. And then they, they're not going to want to eat
or move or much of anything. Pretty lethargic, I imagine. Yeah. Interesting. So they try to resolve the issue by removing all the teeth, because draw that out for me.
Yeah, I don't know, but I can tell you that it does work.
That's wild.
And they can live without their teeth, but it seems like it'd be nicer to not have to lose all your teeth.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to say leukocyte adhesion deficiency in humans is one pathology that results in periodontitis that's so severe they typically lose their teeth by the time they're in their early 20s. And by that time, the pathology resolves when all the teeth are gone. But the problem is that they can't get the neutrophils into the tissue for surveilling, and that creates this whole cascade of inflammation that just is problematic. So the bacteria never actually infiltrate the tissues, but the bacterial components will elicit fire, basically. And so as soon as you get that innervation from that tooth into the soft tissue removed, and you no longer can build that microbiome profile on the surface, then it's resolved. I don't know that the same mechanism applies here, but that's really interesting. I'm definitely going to go on a deep dive after this. But I love that you're saying that veterinary science already knows that gut health starts in the mouth, and yet we're still trying to plug away at that in human. When you say mouth, we're talking diet, I assume?
Well, actually, no, I think that's a bit more tricky. So they don't tend to learn a lot about diet. But so it's more, I think they learn how to do dental cleanings and extractions.
Oh, okay. Well, that is very interesting.
I see. So they get veterinarians or vet students get essentially dental related or adjacent training for our companion pets, and might understand more of host microbe interactions related to periodontitis and other various conditions, but not necessarily understand how diet and other factors may impact that ecosystem.
That's right. Although I think this next generation is much more interested in diet and nutrition. So it may be changing.
Excellent.
Yeah.
If only we could crosstalk a lot more here. I also love that, since I'm going to go deep with the science already, you're already playing in the blood microbiome, which I love because it's such a hot topic in humans. And and you did a nice gut study. Was that in dogs?
It was in dogs with chronic enteropathy, or these chronic GI cases where they don't know if it's inflammatory or not, but they just know they're having chronic diarrhea, vomiting, or constipation.
Right. So you were looking at the microbiome in the fecal content as well as the blood compartment. And what you found was the fecal compartment not changed between the two, healthy and GI issue, but in the blood, there was a very distinct compartmental change.
Well, actually, I think both were different, but it was more dramatic in the blood. You're absolutely right.
Right.
But the dogs that had chronic enteropathy tended to have lower diversity in the fecal microbiome, which we focus so much on, and to be out of balance. But when you looked at the blood, they had really high diversity in the blood.
Yeah.
Like shockingly high diversity in the blood, where we didn't really. Elisa, who started that work, I mean, we did not expect that. I mean, it seems like it's an indication of that there may be something like leaky gut happening and bacteria passing into the bloodstream. We don't know that they're active. We're still working on, like, are they living? Or are they just dormant? Right? We don't expect them to be like having a whole ecosystem in the blood. Let's hope not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the consensus right now is that the blood microbiome is typically within the cells. And so you're right. They're not exactly just floating around freestyle in the blood necessarily.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
That seems like a septic issue and not.
Yeah, that'd be bad. But we have actually seen bacteria inside red blood cells. And I know that's been found for people too, which is kind of cool.
It is very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Not something we were ever taught. It was supposed to be sterile.
Mm-hmm. Lungs sterile. Apparently not.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's fascinating.
The other cool thing that Elisa found was that while she was waiting to get like those clinically validated samples from dogs with the chronic enteropathy, she looked at dogs that were on different diets that were all healthy. And she didn't really expect to find anything, but she found like a really clear signal of different diets having different bacteria, which makes sense too, right? But
it does.
Yeah.
Well, moving back to your cat study, I specifically loved the work around looking at the engraftment from the FMT. So they're getting a donor, and you're putting it in an oral, assuming
capsule,
it
right?
goes through, a capsule that withstands the gastric, so it can move into the intestinal to supply a new microbiome, essentially. But you are getting engraftment. And I know it wasn't a long-term study. You're just looking 2 weeks after basically a month of treatment. But I'm really compelled by this idea because it's such a hot topic for probiotics in general, and also when we're looking at things like the fecal transplants. What is the propensity for that engraftment, and how durable is that? But I like that you're looking. Do you have any insight there?
Yeah, I mean, definitely right. So we just, at least for like, it was our initial engraftment, really. And we could say, like, after 2 weeks, like, it wasn't just coming from the capsule. Like, we can definitely say that it lasted that long. We really love to do more longitudinal studies on that.
Yeah.
We did just publish a really nice paper on dogs. And I think we learned some things for looking at engraftment in the cat paper. So we did even better, I think, with the next one. I mean, some things are really obvious that we figured out, but if the donor and the recipient are more different, then we can see that signal of engraftment a lot stronger, which just makes sense. But we saw a pretty broad range of engraftment. Of course, there's so many questions to ask with those kinds of studies. We're still kind of really early days. But the one thing that was really new about the approach that we had then, which I think has become more common, is delivering it oral, using a lyophilized stool so it doesn't have to be frozen. It's like, some of the human stool banks, like, they were making people swallow like 30 frozen capsules, which just sounds horrible. And so I sort of took a different approach of like, let's just introduce a little bit every day for a month and see how we do.
I saw with the cats, some of them couldn't do 2 a day. Were the dogs, did they do better?
Yeah, it's much easier in dogs. They like some dogs eat poop.
I bet.
And I think maybe even as many as half of the dogs or something. I've seen some estimates as high as that eat poop. Some of them try not to, for sure, but cats are less likely to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know.
And killing a cat is not easy. Like you can train your dogs to take pills. I mean, at least my dogs are really, they think it's a treat. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Oh, he's tough with the pills. He definitely, it's like, that looks bitter. Smells bitter from here.
So you have all sorts of supplements, and how do you make them taste appealing for our companion pets? Is there a magic formula for flavor?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely not like, there are people who that's a whole expertise.
Yes.
But we do have like a pill putty that we recently worked with. So we have a partner who manufactured it for us, and we did palatability testing with it. And what I love about the pill putties is that you can just choose how much you need to cover the pill to make it palatable. And I think they have a pretty good formula. So we have 3 flavors now. My little tip for like how to get your dog to take a pill. I mean, some dogs just won't, but with my first dog, I had to like give her the pill pocket or the pill putty without the pill in it enough that she thought it was a treat, and then I could sneak in the pill when I had to. But that was sort of how I was able to do it. In terms of, I mean, cats are hard. Like we've done a couple studies on like we want to launch some treats for cats. They hate them half the time. Like we're still sort of trying to figure out what, but I think that's really common for cats.
Yeah. So you didn't end up going with a rehydrated lyophilized syringe just to.
Well, we have. So for the FMT in particular, we have like powder that veterinarians can do in clinic enema transfers with, and so if you really have like a sick cat who can't be pilled, that's what I would recommend doing, and you don't have to deal with that.
See.
But then it's very like then it's more invasive, and they have to go in, and you have to pay for all that. But it might be the fastest, easiest way.
Very cool. I love all of this. The other thing I wanted to talk about was your phage supplements. So, for our listeners, what is a phage? Can you tell us about the phage?
Yeah. So all bacteria have little viruses that attack them, and they're called bacteriophages because they eat bacteria. That's literally what that means. And as microbiologists, the way that we find them is you can grow the bacterial host for them. And then when you like drop these little viruses onto that bacterial lawn, they eat a little hole in it, and they call that a plaque. I'm really excited about bacteriophages. I did discover with a student, we found one that actually will lyse the anthrax bacterium. We had a lot of fun with that because it was a really big, weird one. But for cats and dogs, we've been isolating phages that target E. coli because, in addition to metronidazole killing off some of these good gut bacteria, it also doesn't actually harm E. coli. And in fact, we've actually found in some of our like lab studies that in some cases it seems to actually promote its growth. We don't really understand that yet, but so it's introducing this imbalance and then maybe even like boosting the E. coli. I mean, I always thought the E. coli went up just from a lack of competition, but could be even worse things happening. And so
just to check in, the metronidazole on the pathology, it's disrupting is it liver function?
So they're trying to really what it does, at least from the microbiology side. I'm not as good for the liver function side. Is I think they're really trying to target like Clostridia and like some anaerobic bacteria that have been associated with overgrowth, right? Like C. perfringens, which is like we don't totally know if it's a pathogen or like it's a frenemy, right? Like, and why does it make toxins sometimes and it doesn't other times? So I think that's really what they mean to be targeting, but it's not been tested and designed to be that specific. Plus, there are a bunch of Clostridia that are like beneficial, and it's too broad in what it kills. But it doesn't harm like aerobic bacteria. And because E. coli, is more air tolerant than its slime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, phages are fascinating. I mean, viruses just in general. Not to distract us, but I'm curious to know if any of y'all seen the recent preprint on the obelisk chatter.
No,
I have not. No.
Yeah, basically another category like between viruses and viroids that are being further explored and understanding their role in the microbiome. So
I saw the headline. I wasn't sold, but I didn't read the whole article, so I can't speak on it yet.
yeah. So
I'm gonna have to look that up.
We won't. Oh yeah, well, we can definitely chat about it offline. But like, to the point of just the role and ubiquity of bacteriophages and how they can be utilized in these different applications when we talk about health, and in this case, pet health.
I think there are like 10 phages for every bacterium.
10 to 1.
I saw the technology and I was interested for a variety of reasons. And most of my curiosity is really around the regulatory space or their lack of. And I got excited, but also cautious because there are a couple supplements out for humans. I know pretty much nothing about them, but it is curious to me. When you introduce the phages, does it have a holistic obliterative effect, or is it more of a subtle forever treatment that you have to take because you keep repopulating if you don't have the phages on board?
Yeah, I mean, so that right now there's our are in sort of still in research and development. There is a phage cocktail on the market for E. coli in people that Deerland Enzymes made, and they're now part of ADM. And it's been sold for, I think, a decade or something. And they're sort of the first to bring it to market as a supplement. And I think we were one of the first to bring it to pets, but we just found that it doesn't always work. I think it's helpful. Like our customers told us that they were finding it helpful for their cats and dogs. And that's sort of part of what turned us on to this being a potential problem. So we've been working to identify new other phages that are also target E. coli that might allow them to be more efficacious for cats and dogs.
You think it's a strain issue, like the phage is specific to maybe just a few E. coli strains and not all the ones you need?
So yeah, see that one that's on the market, it's called Pre4 Pro, and it's designed to target some of the worst human E. coli strains. There's like so many different kinds of E. coli.
Yeah.
And the way you test is like you test it against ones that are known to be beneficial, and you want to make sure it doesn't have a negative effect on them, and that it's specific for the strains that you're interested in. And the reason phages are of interest is because they can be so much more specific.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have to test them, right? The host range can vary quite a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
Fascinating.
And the regulatory space, it seems real soft.
Well, I know it's definitely a challenge. We've definitely had investors who are like, they were uncomfortable with the regulatory aspects of it, but it does seem like the Pre4 Pro product is doing really well, and it's registered, and I think it's going through AFCO now.
Excellent. Fantastic.
So they're clearing a path for us, which is great because I think it's going to be a lot less harmful than some of these antibiotics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we hope.
The weird thing I learned is there are a bunch of phages that I think are already being used on food for food safety, but they don't label them.
I saw that too. Right. Exactly. That's so bizarre. That's kind of where I get really cautious, and then I'm like, well, we don't even know what we're exposing ourselves to. So
exactly.
It's a wild ride over here. But we're much more free for all with the probiotics, which, have their own inherent issue with potential antibiotic resistant genes, but phages less so.
I think they're something better than what they're replacing. Right, like probably with like more chemicals and yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Gosh, I wanted to switch it briefly I wanted to learn a little bit more about the doggy biome and kitty biome oral health tests. Could you share a bit more about how it works? Is it a physical like swab? Is it a saliva collection? What are you measuring and what are you learning from those measurements?
Oh yeah, actually I have a kit. Do you want me to go grab it?
Sure.
Hang on a sec.
Oh, there's puppies.
Yeah.
It's
like, what are you doing? Are you going for a walk without me? No, don't worry. It's not yet time for that. Okay. I actually did a sample today for Charlie. So it's just an oral swab, and you just swab the gum line, upper and lower, and I don't worry about the inside just because it's too hard because they're not sedated. So we have like a box. This is my dog Darwin. I didn't plan to have him be on every box. I thought we could do lots of dogs, but right now he's
Darwin's
the main one.
A superstar.
He's a superstar. I have a little booklet I'm very proud of.
Aww,
I guess cute. This is like reversed, but one side for dogs and the other for cats, and instructions like make sure you have to register the sample. That's really important. And then you take the swab out, and then you like swab the gum line, and then you mail it back to us. We have like It comes with a little bubble mailer. And this tube just fits right in this 5x7 mailer. And then you just mail it to us. And we get this and we like take the swab tip, we cut it off, put it into an extraction tube, and then like lyse the bacteria. And then we use sequencing to look at a 16S full length gene. And then we have sort of our own proprietary reference database that's designed for cats and dogs. Fortunately, there's been a lot of work done on oral bacteria. So we actually find a lot. We do pretty well with those samples.
That's fascinating.
Are there strains of or types of cats and dogs that fare worse generally?
Yes, definitely. So the small dogs have a lot of issues. And I mean, what they think, I think it's probably more complicated than this, but sort of the, prevailing wisdom is that it's because they have such small mouths, but their teeth aren't proportionately smaller. So it's just really crowded and food gets stuck in there. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's some other like genetic factors going on as well with, some of the brachycephalic breeds where this mouths have also been like pushed in this way, right? You can imagine that's going to create crowding, and some of their teeth actually like turn up sideways. And like I've heard stories about big pieces of food getting wedged in there for long periods of time.
Ouch.
So,
Oh no.
especially important to brush their teeth, which a lot of people, just life is busy. It's hard,
Right.
Do you think the dental chews for animals are helpful?
Some, but I think they don't replace toothbrushing, but it's better than nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Could you expand further? I'm having an assumption that the average pet parent probably doesn't brush their companion's teeth as regularly as their own teeth. Could you share more as a term, like, what are some of the ways that if we were to do that, what would we maybe preventing? How could we help manage and improve their quality of life too?
Right. So the gold standard that your veterinarian will tell you is brush their teeth, but not everybody wants to do that. So there are other options, giving them some chews to help try and like promote salivation and like just cleaning things out that way. Some dogs like Darwin, he just sort of inhales things real fast. So like it's harder to get him to chew on. He's just a Hoover. Things go straight down. So doesn't have a lot of chance to get in there and have a good effect. So some other alternatives are like some powders that you can put in the water that are trying to like promote the beneficial bacteria and starve out some of the pathogens. And we know they think things like iron. So they're trying to see if they can manipulate that by what goes into the water. And a challenge with the small dogs is that they tend also not to drink as much water. So that's another factor with maybe why they have more oral health issues. One thing that I like to do with my dogs that I find really helpful is Icelandic kelp powder. We have one which actually has the Pre4 Pro because we've been finding E. coli to be a problem too in the oral cavity. It actually has been shown in a study to reduce plaque, and I find that it does improve the breath of my dogs. It's not going to, cure periodontal disease, but it can help a little bit.
Wow, that's neat.
It's probably just mechanical, but it's a healthful thing to take anyways, and it's just a tiny bit you put on the food. There are dental treats that are specifically designed for that. Some of them have better ingredients than others. So there's a whole range of them.
Sure, of course, yes.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
We could say the same about all of human food.
Yeah, I definitely try to be mindful about Aka's kibble, but I also between not daily brushing, but like occasional brushing, but also giving him various like deer antler bones and just things of interest chew wise that also gives that abrasive mechanical action that somewhat simulates brushing. But with the said, he's also a 100-pound dog with a big mouth. So I don't know if it's just been lucky. I don't know if I'm doing enough. His breath seems pretty standard for a dog. It's tolerable, warm and tolerable and full of love. But I could imagine how if there was like a distinct or an unpleasant breath aroma, how much I'd probably dismiss that to maybe his kibble or him eating something from a walk. Is that something that we should be paying more attention to? Or is it more of like, it's a stool standard and things are probably fine?
I think that is something to pay attention to. I mean, I think there are a lot of people who just figure dogs have bad breath, right? And that's normal. And some people also, they don't know that their dog should have nicely formed stool too. So paying attention to like the poop consistency as well as their breath can be signs of things that are going on inside that are really helpful, I think. The dog breath is associated with periodontal disease and the development of these pockets where you get, sulfur compounds being produced that are smelly and not so nice to live with.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think there's probably a big genetic factor and that there's breed differences with this, but still kind of learning about that. Because it does seem like some dogs, you don't need to brush their teeth and they're totally less likely to get gingivitis and periodontal disease.
So I do want to touch on soft food versus kibble. Does that play a role? It feels like it should.
It does. I think it's, I feel like there was a time when we were told that kibble was better because it was harder and it would help dislodge particles. But I think that how much of the diet is proportionally protein versus carbohydrate is probably the bigger factor than is it soft or hard.
Interesting. Okay. So macros comes down to macros.
Yeah. That's kind of the level we're at right now.
Yeah.
Macros.
Oh, good. I mean, we're all on the same page then.
I can work with that. That's fascinating. Yeah, I think, similarly with the diet and food, I could see giving certain soft foods or prepped, I don't want to say gourmet, but more prepped foods, I could see how that could lead to maybe more variability in dog breath too, just due to the nature of its substance. But I appreciate you sharing that. It's with that sometimes being something dismissed, paying attention to both the stool but also the breath could be a good way in tandem for kind of monitoring your pet's overall health. Besides bad breath and, let's say, like bleeding or inflamed teeth or falling out teeth, are there any other signs we as pet owners should pay attention to?
Well, if you are giving the antler chews, keep an eye out, in case he does fracture a tooth. That's always something to keep an eye on because dogs are really likely to chew on things. And I mean, like my dad fractured a tooth on like grape nuts or something, like when you get older. But I think dogs can like be a little more prone to it because they'll chew on all kinds of stuff. So keep an eye on that.
Mm-hmm.
What's less common is abnormal enamel, but my rescue dog probably had distemper as a puppy. So he has weird ridges in his teeth that the vet thinks is because he had distemper as a puppy.
Wow.
But yeah, bad breath is, I think it's good to pay attention to. And, if you don't want to brush, toothpaste can be still a nice thing to consider, like just putting it on there. It has enzymes in there that can help break down some of those, the carbohydrates that can stick around and cause trouble.
So macros, I'm still sitting on this dry versus wet, not the main thing. So I'm going to move over to the raw diet. Have you noticed a great benefit with the raw diet for companions?
Well, I just want to go back 1 second for the soft versus firm, because I think that when they were comparing that before, at least if you think about breath, it's like canned versus kibble, right? Like canned, it doesn't smell so good, right? I mean, like, whereas if you're comparing like a fresh diet, which is more common today, it wouldn't smell bad, right? And there's some lovely canned foods out there, but some of them are pretty fragrant already. For raw, a lot of people swear by it in terms of oral health. I have 2 senior dogs who are raw fed at this stage of their life, and they both have periodontal disease, and they're like almost 17 and 13, and they say that 2/3 of dogs over 3 have periodontal disease. It's just really prevalent.
It feels very similar. Very similar situation.
I'm seeing some common trends between the pets and us.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap here. Yeah.
Have you ever... No, go ahead.
No, please. Have you ever go?
I don't know if you know the answer to this, but are we as pet parents and our companions able to transmit or have any communicable exchange in our microbiomes? Particularly interested in the gut, because I can imagine some people allow their cat or dog to lick themselves or kiss them. Has that ever been explored? Is that even possible?
So, it's something we've flirted with doing a study on ourselves, which is a fun thing that we scientists really want to do. There was a study that came out of the University of Colorado where they were looking at like families and did couples share their gut bacteria. And then they included pets in the households. It all came out a little while ago. But I did talk to Rob Knight about the study, and they sort of just included the pets as like a control, or I'm not sure what kind of control, but just they weren't really thinking they'd find anything there. But it turned out like people who had a dog in the house were more likely to share bacteria with each other and with their dog. Of course, they can probably detect that they picked him up from the dog more than they could from their spouse or partner because they are more different. Just like we found with our engraftment study, there's a like stronger signal the more different you are. But absolutely, we are sharing microbes with our pets and vice versa. And I also talked to some people at Emory at an ASM conference a few years back where they had been looking at like antibiotic resistant bacteria and like our pet's reservoir for that. And what they were finding really suggested that we're coming home from the hospital with these really nasty bugs and then we're giving them to our pets more so than the other way around, which really makes sense, right? But that work I think is still not yet published. So
that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, wow.
We're the filthy beasts, people.
It's not to say it couldn't go both ways, but it probably makes more sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so if I ordered your test and I evaluated my pet, what kinds of things could I learn from the outcome and how would I be treating my animal differently?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think we're still trying to figure that out. How is it really useful? I mean, I think in part it's helping people become aware of periodontal disease and some of the markers of it. So we can identify a lot of different bacteria and those that are health associated and those that are disease associated. And one use I found, I started using a water additive called TEEF, and then I was able to evaluate, like, was it pushing the composition of bacteria in a healthful direction? So I thought it was really valuable for that kind of before and after testing approach. The other thing that I didn't expect that we're finding is E. coli becoming elevated in some cats and dogs' mouths. If you ask a veterinarian, they'll say like, oh yeah, of course dogs have E. coli in their mouth because they eat poop and poop has E. coli. But healthy cat and dog poop should not have that much E. coli. And it really shouldn't be resident in the mouth. And there's one paper that came out recently, last year, I think, that showed for oral tumors, they actually found E. coli in 100% of the oral tumors. This is a tiny study, but still, like all of them had some E. coli and none of the healthy ones did. So I think I'm really keen on doing more work on this. And so that's why we have the Pre4 Pro added to the kelp to try and like target that. And at least they're getting rid of some really nasty E. coli if they should happen to come along with those. And it helps with the plaque. And then you can also evaluate, like, is the toothbrushing working? Like, probably some techniques are better than others, right? And so that's one use. But then you have to do 2 tests.
Yes, of course. The after treatment to see if you've improved the situation. Yes. Okay, very cool. So E. coli being a signal, what are some of the other companion pathogens that we're on the alert for in that assay?
Oh, we have so many of them. I can share a list with you, but like some of this is like the obvious players like Porphyromonas, but then any really like a lot of anaerobic bacteria are associated with these pockets. And, and there's like the beneficial ones, like Neisseria. And yeah, for a while we could only do genus level identifications, but now that we can get species level, it's over 30 pathogens that we're detecting.
Wow. That feels about the same.
Yeah.
And any more than that, how expensive does it get if you wanted to include a lot more?
Oh, well, so we're doing sequence-based testing. So we just, every bacterium that we detect, we'll report on.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas the PCR panel, they'd have to do more for, Yeah.
Okay. Got it. So what's your favorite dog healthy beneficial bacteria?
Oh, well, the one that I probably is kind of an obvious one, but it's a gut bacterium called Pepticedarbacter hiranonis, and it's one that plays these really critical roles in bile acid metabolism. And so bile is really important for like fat digestion, and then a lot of it gets recycled, but some of it passes through and it gets converted by bacteria in the gut from primary to secondary bile acids. And so this is a group that's really important in cats and dogs in doing that. And it's one that's killed by metronidazole. So we've been doing a lot of really cool work on this group. We actually have a couple new species as well. So it's them and their cousins, I guess. And cats are very different from dogs. And so we're having a lot of fun exploring this group. There's a lot of cool bacteria though, so it's hard to choose.
I'm definitely interested in this story of the bile acid situation. I'll be doing some more deep dive on that.
And I'd love to figure out if there's something that's like such a keystone player in the mouth for health in cats and dogs too.
Yeah. I know we talked about Keystone for Porphyromonas gingivalis. It's such a small player, but it can affect the whole community.
That's right.
Given the right conditions. Since I play the inflammation side of the story, I know a lot of people end up talking about all of these different players as far as the microbial community, but there is a lot of evidence to suggest that if you can kind of quiet the inflammation, that all of the ecology will come back to homeostasis or a roundabout. I mean, given that it flexes throughout the day. So we wake up, we have a nice punch of cytokines and stressors to wake us up and get us out of bed and get our heart moving. And so we have these kind of natural ebb and flow of inflammatory cascades, but they should, resolve throughout the day and cycle in this nice kind of signal throughout. And when that doesn't cycle down, that's when we have the problem and dysbiosis can flourish. But I do wonder kind of what types of interventions beyond tweaking the actual members that we could do for our companions, because I've been obsessed with the human, but I haven't been so obsessed with my companion other than cuddling.
Yeah, we really need this sort of synergy, right? Because we need to be able to calm the inflammation in order to get the beneficial bacteria back in there and have it go back to having a healthy biofilm.
Yeah, I get uncomfortable when we start talking about, heavy pharmaceuticals to control those inflammatory levers, but sometimes you do need a kickstart depending on the pathology. But I do kind of trend towards wanting more natural components to help kind of push those levers into the natural state that they want to go. But we do have to support a whole healthy system. So I can't disassociate the dietary elements and the cleansing mechanisms and all of the other levers that we have, of course, to keep that whole system working well. But I do think the whole mucosal lining from, mouth to the other it really does want to regenerate and come back to balance. So, given the right opportunity.
So do you have any recommendations for natural approaches to reducing inflammation in human gums? Maybe I could see if they're useful for pets.
I did start a line of products with niacinamide, nicotinamide, vitamin B3. It's all the same thing. But basically, it is a very powerful way to induce a quiet apoptosis in the oral neutrophil that will inspire wound healing. And that's the mechanism that I've been evaluating. I did look at the safety in dogs and cats, and there's no significant safety issue. I think there is a limit for cats, but not dogs, I believe. I just looked that over this morning, so it's...
Okay. Well, we should talk.
Yeah. I do think that there are, very similar mechanisms at play. I would have to kind of deep dive a little bit to feel solid about that. But I do think that there's, if not that, then something similar that could be deployed. Yeah.
Yeah, we want to develop some new things for cats and dogs. We don't have anything like our fecal transplants yet. I've had a very long-term customer whose dog had oral cancer and microbiome was destroyed. And she's like, can I have an oral microbiome transplant? But we didn't really have that.
Right.
So, where do you harvest your FMT?
This is a whole labor of love. So we have about 100 donors in the East Bay. And so Jonathan, if your pup is healthy, let me know. And we have drivers who drive around picking up poop from coolers on people's porches 5 days a week.
Wow.
And and then we have a team who processes it and then gets it we bank it in the freezer for a month and do all this testing on it. And
that's amazing.
And then we freeze dry it and powder it, and it's a whole thing. But we do it because we have people tell us it's life-changing all the time.
Yeah, and definitely have to check it out.
Well, even in human studies, that's the take home. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So we are working on isolating the bacteria and hoping to create new probiotics in the future.
Excellent. That's so fun.
I'd love to get to oral eventually. Yeah.
You will. I'll be here for it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I was going to say this when I think about formulation and product development in the probiotic space and how that's applied to companions. Yeah, it's exciting to think about the way to troubleshoot that when it comes to oral care and being able to manage inflammation, periodontitis, bad breath, and also the things that are interlinked with the further down our guts when it comes to the dysbiosis and whatnot. So I think we're both here all really excited to see and continue paying attention to what research and also like services and products you all are doing at AnimalBiome. Is there anything specific we should stay on the lookout for?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, this is the fun thing that we're about to launch, and it's more for fun because I can't say no. I'm a researcher at heart. Is people will be able to send us samples for all kinds of animals except for humans starting next week.
No
so
humans,
if you
thanks.
have a horse or a ferret or a rabbit.
Okay. How many animal biomes have you worked with in your professional life?
Actually, we just looked at the database, and I think we have samples from like 35 different species. But because I was we're doing this disease ecology of a whole bunch of animals, when I started working on cats and dogs, I started with their wild cousins. So I have samples from order Carnivora, so like hyenas and wild dogs and lions and leopards and cheetahs and even some black-footed cats, and mostly focused on the carnivores.
Gosh, I mean, I could keep going. This is a really fun topic. Camille, is there anything that you wanted to follow up on? Did we miss anything?
So I know we're both obsessed nerds over here, but what do you do outside of nerddom that is fun?
Something I've gotten really into, I think starting, in the pandemic was I got really into cooking.
Yeah? What do you cook?
I cook all kinds of things. Most recently, I think the things we've been trying have been we did fried oysters over the weekend. Ooh, and I really love rice dishes, actually. So got a really nice red beans and rice recipe. All kinds. I make everything. I have a East African cookbook that has some of my favorite recipes. Yes. We made some really nice stuff for Lunar New Year. And it was just really fun. I can basically follow a recipe, but I find it really relaxing and takes my mind off work.
That's so fun. I love that. My family at home, I don't live at home anymore. I live across the country, but they do a once a month food soiree with their friends where they pick a country and they all bring a dish to represent that country or community. And I just am so envious every month that they're doing this without me.
That's lovely.
Kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, we did it when we were in the pandemic. We would do it virtually. We all got the same cookbook, and then we try and cook something together, and that was really fun. Yeah, my family's on the other side of the country too. I miss them.
Yeah.
Aww. Do you ever cook for the fur kids?
Yes, although I have to admit, not so much more recently. But our oldest dog, who's passed away, we cooked for her for a couple of years. But then we found the frozen raw, and it's really easy, and they do really well on it, and so I can be lazy. But it is really fun cooking for the furkids. They are the most appreciative audience you can have for your cooking. But they're maybe not discriminating, but
True. So true.
Some are, but not mine.
How about you, Jonathan?
I've been exploring it more. So I have not cooked for Aka much, but I'm now looking more into different recipes that hopefully complements what I already cook for myself and my partner, so that we can both be mindful about minimizing food waste, but also making sure his macros are being met.
There should be an app for that, right? Your companion macros.
Mm-hmm.
There are some options. So I think they're more on web pages, but Balance It, and there are a few others.
Yeah. Just add that on to the Fitbit for pets and track your steps with your dog.
I did recently make treats for my dogs. That was fun.
Yeah, we've done that.
Yeah. That's a good one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Little cheesy puff crackers. That was fun. I ate a few.
Yeah, why not?
just curious, right? What does it taste like?
Yeah, they were great, actually.
They're healthy crackers.
Yeah.
Maybe a little like bland, but
yeah, that's okay. Sometimes that's fine.
I'm gonna do something awkward now. I'll transition to an outro. In summary, Holly, the things that I've gathered is not only is the human microbiome dynamic, but there's so much that we can be informed about our pets' oral and gut health. You founded and are chief science officer of a very fun and exciting pet venture called AnimalBiome. You have microbiome testing kits for dogs and cats, in addition to supplements and various products that can address their gut and oral health conditions. And you also, starting next week, will be able to sample not just dog and cats, but I believe other companion pets. Does that sound right?
That's right. For their poop, starting with.
I'm sending my horse people your way.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're excited.
That's amazing. Well, again, Holly, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to sit down with Camille and I on Let's Get Oral. We really enjoy talking about oral health and meeting with fellow researchers and enthusiasts like you, especially when it comes to the microbiome. And it's really fun to learn more about you, your life, your venture, and what you're working on next.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really a treat to talk with you and Camille.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Until next time, thank you all again for tuning in to Let's Get Oral. I'm Jonathan. My co-host Camille is here as usual, lovely, and keep smiling.
Over now.